Hey, welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. We're presented and brought to you by FanDuel. We appreciate you being here as we have another Penn State head coaching update to get to. And as always, we are bringing in our friend Chris here to talk about it all with us. Chris, last time you were with us, we nailed it down to kind of four candidates. It looks like that has maybe changed by one, maybe two guys a little bit this week. We're going to get into them. But first, many of you were asking about Bob Chesney and Brian Daboll in the comments last time. So we want to go ahead, talk about those two guys first, and then we'll kind of get to the other one. So, Chris, I put out a video on, I believe it was Monday, about Bob Chesney, basically saying he could be somebody for Penn State, but it looks like he's a little bit down the line, kind of like the Brian Hartline situation where, sure, he could be considered, but it looks like they have their eyes on maybe 3, 4, 5 guys who have more Power 4 head coaching experience in front of him. Would you agree with that assessment on Bob Chesney to Penn State?
I I kind of do. It's a little too early to tell right now, but I think Bob Chesney is a little higher than people might realize. I do think it's probably unlikely that he would get the job, but I do think he's a little higher. So from what I was told was he had a phone interview on Sunday, I guess the day after the game. He had a phone interview. He knocked it out of the park. The guy is very energetic. He absolutely commands a room. I'm sure that will probably lead to a face-to-face interview where he'll absolutely kill it. As far as where he stands in the pecking order, to be honest with you right now, it's not that clear because, some of the people that, I talked to 2 or 3 people and they're pretty well in the know. Some people think he's a little higher up. Some people think he's a little further down, but they all said that he knocked it out, the interview out of the park. Where he stands at the moment, it's just too early to tell. But he's in the mix. He was not on the radar previously. He is now on the radar.
Okay. Would you say, and I know this is really difficult to kind of pin down, but I'll just ask to see what your thoughts are. Would you say he's around Brian Hartline, below Brian Hartline, above
Right around
him? I
Brian
mean,
Hartline.
right around.
I,
Okay.
I I actually think he's above Brian Hartline right now, which
Okay.
I don't know if that's I necessarily agree with that, but I just know like Brian Hartline also knocked the interview out of the park, and there's a lot of comparisons to kind of Brian Hartline and Chesney as far as this coaching search is as far as like one's at a top program but he's not a head coach, one's at a lower level program is a head coach. But I do think they're comparable. I do think Chesney might be a little higher at the moment because there's one person in particular that's has pretty good info that thinks Chesney's a little higher and Brian Hartline's not in it quite as much, in it, but not, quite to the level. Because Pat Kraft, like I said, and I've been saying for a long time, has made it perfectly clear he wants an established sitting head coach. Uh, there's positives and negatives to everything. The thing with Chesney, and just, listen, James Madison, that's where Kirk Cignetti came from. Nobody would have thought Kirk Cignetti was going to kill it, just like what he's doing now before he started with Indiana. So it's not that a guy from a lower level school cannot kill it in college football at a higher level. Some people think he'll recruit very well, but the thing is like the whole NIL thing. Now, you hire a GM for that. The only negatives is if you get Chesney, and he brings guys from James Madison, yes, it worked for Indiana, but like say he brings a handful of guys, who's going to bring more talented players? A guy like Chesney from James Madison, or say if someone like Eli Drinkowitz brings some guys from Missouri back home. And then the whole NIL aspect, what's his NIL approach? Because it probably wasn't a big thing at James Madison, a lower level school. Could he recruit at a high level? He's very, very energetic. He's very, he commands a room, but does he have the contacts and the relationships at some big programs and with the, like in the DMV area and all that? But he's definitely a very good coach. And he's definitely on the radar now. Tough to say where he's at in the pecking order, he's definitely on the radar.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think it's interesting when you talk about UCLA and Chesney as well, because it does seem like he's pretty high up on UCLA's board. And so if UCLA does go after him immediately after the season, does he just take that job even if he knows he's in it for Penn State, or would he maybe hold out and wait? It's I don't know if we have any of that information to be able to know that, but it is interesting to think all that kind of
Right.
through.
No, that's absolutely right. I should have brought up UCLA. So another thing that pretty much has been reported, he is UCLA's top candidate. I heard, I think Chesney and I think Eric Morris are UCLA's top candidate. It's very interesting to see what will he do. It's a good question. It is too early to know if he would jump at the UCLA job or wait for the Penn State job if it does become more realistic. I don't know when he's going to interview face-to-face yet, but I think after he does interview face-to-face, we will know a little more. You mentioned Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll, fans are funny, man. Like, I guarantee you Brian Daboll has almost no chance of becoming the head coach at Penn State. From what I was told is he, like, I guess Penn State took a very brief look. I do think I did hear that they contacted him. It was just a quick basic thing of, a conversation, and pretty quickly they realized it just wasn't a connection. It wasn't the right time. And Brian Daboll whoever's thinking Brian Daboll, get him off your minds. He's not going to be the head coach. I would be shocked if he's a head coach at Penn State. And I don't think he's going to be an offensive coordinator either. You never know, but I don't believe that. So just to give you not a new name, but who Penn State's new top target is that they're going after very hard right now is Kalen DeBoer. Now, there's some things I need to address here, and I talked to you about this the other night, because most of the fans here that watch this Big Ten Huddle, I think, are good people. I read the comments and where people come from, but unfortunately, you get some there just to start trouble. So I just want to reiterate how this stuff works, okay? And where I come from, all right? I have never claimed to be an insider. I tell JR all the time, don't introduce me as an insider. I'm not an insider, but I do have some pretty good connections to insiders, okay? That is legit. What I did was working for Rivals, okay? I wasn't working for them collecting a paycheck. The person who ran the Penn State Rivals site asked me to come on and do player evaluations for him, help him out with some Rival stuff, and we became close. He is an insider that I've stayed in touch with, and he still works in the recruiting sphere. Okay, that is one person I know. Penn State also has a board of trustees. Board of trustees are very high up guys that they're power people that vote on a lot of stuff regarding Penn State athletics and Penn State stuff in general, who are directly connected with Pat Kraft. Now, this hiring decision is directly Pat Kraft's, but the board of trustees would be people in the know. I do have two friends, one in particular, that I mention this stuff because you get some trolls that will sit there and say that these guys don't know what because Mike Elko didn't get the job, that we don't know what we're talking about and we don't have connections. And some of these people are clueless because you completely miss the part where I say Mike Elko is very unlikely. All I can do is keep people up to date of where this search is going. It's a fluid situation. Every week, there might be a name that's dropped and another name that's added, okay? Penn State absolutely was going after Mike Elko very hard. Pat Kraft was forcing Mike Elko to make a decision, was forcing him to say yes or no. And they got their answer, okay? Now they're going after Kalen DeBoer. Now, I totally understand where people would say, why would Mike Elko or Kalen DeBoer ever leave their situation? They're at better programs. They have all this money. I get it, okay? But there's more to it than that. Here's what people don't understand. Penn State was going to make Mike Elko, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I just want to educate people on why this was a possibility, okay? And again, we're just reporting who they're targeting. We're not saying this is going to happen and it's a definite, like I said, it's unlikely. Penn State was going to make Mike Elko the number one, the highest paid coach in college football. He was currently making at Texas A&M $9 million. Okay. Now, obviously, and he just got an extension offer. I don't know what his extension is, but he got an extension offer. Penn State was willing to go north of $15 plus million and was going to make Mike Elko the number one highest paid coach, and he's from the Northeast. Just because Texas A&M has money does not mean other schools don't have money. Penn State athletics brings in a lot of money. Like, their revenue is probably top 10 athletically. They're a huge university with a lot of sports teams. They have a 100,000 seat stadium. It brings in a lot of money. They were going to make him the number one highest paid coach in football. Now, people would say, why would DeBoer leave Alabama? Because from what I was told, and is also backed up by very, very knowledgeable person who's I don't know him per se, but I've read what he had to say. Kalen DeBoer is miserable at Alabama. That is what reports are. Obviously, Kalen DeBoer is not going to come out and say that publicly. The pressure at Alabama has been just overwhelming. And yes, he knew what he was walking into, but maybe he wanted to give it a shot. And again, trolls, listen to what I'm saying. Kalen DeBoer is unlikely. All I'm doing is telling you who Penn State is targeting. So when Penn State doesn't get Kalen DeBoer, just so the troll army doesn't come out and say, oh, these guys don't know what they're talking about. No, we're telling you who he's targeting. He is not happy at Alabama. I still think it's very unlikely that he that he leaves Alabama. But he's miserable there. A lot of the big boosters, apparently, from the Alabama side, they don't think he's a good fit left. They rushed to hire. He's a West Coast guy. They don't think he's a good fit. The loss to Oklahoma didn't help things. And if he loses in the Iron Bowl to Auburn, watch out. There could be some movement there. All right. Again, it's a long shot. I don't think it's going to happen. But that is right now who Penn State is going after full tilt. And I think last show I said tier 1 guys were Mike Elko, Kalen DeBoer. Tier 2 guys, Eli Drinkowitz, Brent Key. Okay, that is where this is at. Elko's off the board. They're going after Kalen DeBoer now. So Bob Chesney in the mix makes things interesting. Now, other things that's
Can I say something really fast, Chris?
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You're fine. I just want to reiterate. None of this is us saying this is the most likely person and this is going to happen and we're ranking them on most likely. This is targets by Penn State that we are talking about right now. Just because somebody is their number one target does not mean it's the most likely, coach to get to. If we wanted to, we could form this video as this is the most likely person and yada, yada, yada. We don't know that. We don't know what's going on in every single situation. Nobody knows that. The only thing we can give to you, here's who Penn State wants. Here's who makes sense. Here's what we see from the outside looking in on all these situations because we don't talk to Kalen DeBoer personally, know what's going on, but we can tell you here's kind of what things are looking at. Here's where reports are, and here's what Chris knows from the inside a little bit more. Not an insider, but on the inside a little bit more at Penn State. And you can deduce with your own conclusions: is Kalen DeBoer likely or not? That's fine. I personally don't think Kalen DeBoer is very likely either. But I do think Kalen DeBoer is somebody that Penn State should and is going after right now. The next two, as we talked about last time, and I'm with you, Chris. I don't know if I completely know which two is higher right now, but I think at some point we're going to figure it out. Eli Drinkowitz and Brent Key. Is there anybody else in that kind of tier 2 target range for Penn State right now, or would you say those are still the two kind of tier 2 targets?
Well, you got to see where Chesney falls. You got to wait till the in-person interview and see where he falls. But I will say this, that has been confirmed when you mention Eli Drinkowitz and Brent Key as far as who's higher. Everything I've heard, okay, Brent Key is above Eli Drinkowitz. In their pecking order, they would prefer Brent Key over Eli Drinkowitz. Here's the real interesting thing. Okay, this is what's interesting. A lot of people, from what I gather, is they're waiting to see what Lane Kiffin does. Once Lane Kiffin makes his decision, because you have all these SEC schools in play with a lot of these SEC coaching candidates, once he makes his decision, that people think is going to start the domino effect where the other pieces are going to start falling into place. Like, for example, I've always thought like Eli Drinkowitz was, a good shot at Penn State. I still do, just by process of elimination. The reason Penn State wouldn't go out and just hire Drinkowitz immediately and I do believe he and I know there's mutual interest between Drinkowitz and Penn State and the community immediately is because people are worried. Well, if Lane Kiffin doesn't end up going to Florida, what if Eli Drinkowitz then wants Florida instead of Penn State? Drinkowitz is a Southern guy, SEC. He might want to stay, if he has an option there, he might want to choose Florida. I don't know if I think, and I've read anywhere that Drinkowitz is like the number 3 to number 5 candidate on the board for Florida and LSU. So I don't think he's probably going to end up with Florida. I think Lane Kiffin will. But once Lane Kiffin makes a decision, then you're going to see some of the pieces start to fall into place. And it's just funny. I'm not going to go on about this, but just a quick story about like when people say you don't have contacts and sources. And it's not just us. You read other message boards like Zach Seiko, Locked On Nittany. He goes through the same crap. And all the guy does is keep people up to date on what's going on. But like there's this receiver named Taz Williams, this receiver recruit. He's a high 3-star, low 4. He was from Texas, but he had Pennsylvania roots, right? I'm driving home from work. Now the kid's decision on a Saturday, right? I'm driving home from work. It's Friday night. It's like 9:00 at night. I get a text from my source who was in contact with Taz. He said, Penn State got Taz. He's ours. I'm like, all right, awesome, great. I go home. 2.5 hours later, around 11:30 at night, I get a text. The guy's like, I hate recruiting. Taz just told me to change the graphics from Penn State to Baylor. Just like that, the kid changed his mind, all because of money, right? So now, I don't know if it was that Saturday or the following Saturday, they're doing one of these live recruiting things where Taz Williams is announcing live. And he's got 3 or 4 hats there. None of them are Baylor. It's like Penn State, Texas A&M, I think maybe Michigan. And there's a live chat. And I'm telling everybody in the live chat, he's picking Baylor. You don't know what you're talking. I said, listen, I do. I have a connection. You don't know. Like everybody thinks you're nuts when you say you have a connection. You don't know anyway. I said, but he's picking Baylor because there was no hat on the table for Baylor. All of a sudden, it's just like these things. It is what it is. Like I do have some connections, but people want to question them, and that's fine. But that's pretty much where it's at. Just waiting to see, what Lane Kiffin does and move on from there. I do think that, nothing's going to happen until the end of the regular season. I don't think there's going to be a definite decision by anybody till the end of the regular season. So right now, Kalen DeBoer, just to rehash, Kalen DeBoer is the number 1 target. After him, Brent Key is number 2. Then you have Drinkowitz. Then you have Hartline. Bob Chesney falls somewhere in there. I'm not obviously they're not going to hire. Now I can tell you for sure, obviously he's not as high as Kalen DeBoer. If they could get Kalen DeBoer, it's not like, oh, take Bob Chesney or Kalen DeBoer. No, it's Kalen DeBoer. But if it comes down to like Bob Chesney or Eli Drinkowitz, they might take Bob Chesney over Eli Drinkowitz. There's a chance. It's just too early to see where he's at right now. The pecking order. He probably will have an in-person interview considering how well he did in his phone interview. And once he has that in-person interview, we'll probably have more clarity on Bob Chesney. But UCLA is they're his top target. So just got to wait to see how this plays out. It's a coaching carousel for a reason. It's a fluid situation. And I've kept everybody up to date as far as what is going on at the present time, who they're targeting, and where it's at, and that's where we're at.
Yeah, I think here at the Big Ten Huddle with Chris and everything else going on here, you can find some really good info on the Penn State head coaching search, and we definitely appreciate Chris being here for that. So there you go. That's pretty much where we're at. Chris, I'll ask one more question, and then we'll get out of here. Is there anybody else that Penn State fans have rumors they're talking about, or you think Penn State might, try to kick the wheels on or anything like that, maybe give an interview to? I'm not asking you to predict an interview, but is there just anybody else out there that it's like, don't be surprised if this name pops up at some point?
I mean, Cliff Kingsbury's name has came up at here and there throughout the search. I think he's unlikely, but his name did come up. I know people are going to laugh at this, but they've been in contact with Marcus Freeman, and there's less than a 0.001% that Freeman leaves Notre Dame, but they have tried. I mean, see, the whole point to this search, Pat Kraft has said from day one, he's casting a wide net. He's casting a large net. Originally, it was Matt Rule's job to lose with stipulations. Matt Rule finishes the season with Nebraska in the right trajectory. They don't, he doesn't bomb or lose another game or two. Well, right after that, he got embarrassed by Minnesota, and that he pretty much eliminated himself. But since then, and pretty much the whole time, Pat Kraft said he's casting a wide net. That's why you hear different names at different points of throughout the week. That's what he's doing. That is doing due diligence. Okay, you want to, you want to have multiple options, and the chips fall, you pick the best guy you could. So I don't think I don't think there's anybody else at the moment. But Jeff Brom. I do want to mention Jeff Brom. He's still very unlikely, and it was rumored that he signed his extension, but I don't think he signed his extension yet. From my understanding, he's yet to sign his extension. I think he's lower on the Penn State board than most of the guys I mentioned, but that's another name just to keep in the back of your head. But right now, I'd really look to see what Kalen DeBoer does as far as, especially if they lose to the Iron Bowl. And then after that, it's all about Brent Key, Eli Drinkowitz, and Chesney. That's where we're at.
I lied. One more question, and this one will probably be pretty quick. I think we all probably know. Terry Smith, obviously not a head coaching candidate at this point, but you got to think he has some kind of position to stick around at Penn State after the season, right? I mean,
100%. There is not another person on this planet that probably bleeds blue and white more than Terry Smith. Terry Smith is Penn State through and through, and I think I would be shocked if he doesn't get an offer, because there was a report a week or so ago where he was already dropping bags that said to offer an NIL to Western PA kids, WPIAL recruits. I think that's probably from the 27 class kids. So if you're doing that, there's a pretty good idea. You have a pretty good sense that you're going to be retained on the roster. I would be shocked if Terry Smith is not retained. And Penn State has a lot of alumni. They're not all gonna follow Franklin. I wish he would take Jim Knowles, but that probably won't happen. But they have a lot of alumni. Deion Barnes, their D-line coach, played for them. Dan Connor, their linebacker coach, played for them. So you might see more than just Terry Smith sticking around. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but that's I definitely think Terry Smith is sticking around.
You kind of broke up there for a second when you were talking about. Hey, did you mention a specific position or anything like that he could stick around for, or you just think he's likely to stick around at?
I don't know a specific position. I mean, I would think the most likely position would be going back to being a corners coach. Yeah. He was regarded as one of the best cornerback coaches in the country. So I think that would be the likely position that they would look to keep him at. But if not corners, I'm not sure. But I know I would be shocked if he doesn't have a role. But cornerback coach would be my guess.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. All right, Chris, thank you for coming on and talking through the Penn State head coaching search, and thank you everybody for listening and watching. Trolls included, we appreciate you listening and watching. And seriously, if you have any questions or anything like that, put them in the comments. Please do like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Chris just takes time out of his week, about a half hour every single week, to come on here, and he's very gracious with his time, and we very much appreciate it. So show some love to Chris in the comment section, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and we'll keep you up to date here in the coming weeks every Thursday morning with the Penn State head coaching search. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.